Hello, everyone. I'm Donna Fiducia.
And I'm Don Neuen. And this is Cowboy Logic Radio.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. When their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glance. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance.
Welcome to Cowboy Logic Radio, everyone.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let me be the first to welcome you to tonight's absolutely riveting show, Cowboy Logic Radio. Boy, have we got a massive show in store for you tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Back to you, Donna.
So much going on.
Wait a minute. The Bo Sox, Donna.
Yeah, baby.
The absolute Bo Sox.
Fourth time, 15 years.
Fourth time, 15 years.
You know, 15 years ago, I actually was the person on the Fox News Channel that actually gave the news when the Red Sox won and broke the curse of the Babe, much to the chagrin of my producer, Todd Kelly, who to this day continues to text me and go, I hated writing that for you.
The pole in right field, the pimple pole?
Yeah.
What's it called?
Pesky pole.
Pesky pole. Those pesky poles over there in Poland. Hey, we've got a very
pesky Irishman up there in Boston, really.
Well, we've got a very special Irishman on the phone with us. He's a dear friend. He's been a guest on Cowboy Logic Radio. He's also a fellow coworker. He's a member of our team at Star Coaches, the one, the only, Connor Mick O'Brien. Connor, welcome to the show, big guy.
And a Red Sox fan, to say the least.
That's right. We need to remind everybody that Connor lives in the Boston metropolitan area.
I think anybody, though, needs to go on Facebook and look at the picture that Don posted. Don goes to me, I have a new profile picture for you. And he put it up.
It's Manny Ramirez.
Manny Ramirez with his eyes, with his goofy look. The thing is, I mean, I'm really happy. It's not like it was, though, 15 years ago, Connor. I mean, 15 years ago when the curse of the Babe was broken and everybody at Fox hated me.
Connor was 4.
all my producers are going, will you be quiet? But it was like 11 or 12
but nobody cares what you and I think. Nobody cares what you and I think. Connor O'Brien. Connor Mick O'Brien from Boston.
Yes.
A diehard Boston Red Sox fan. Please tell everybody what you did when they kicked the snot out of the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Well, as usual, I am on the road. Don keeps me on the road most of my life. And I did get to watch the game from a hotel room up in Medford, Oregon, which was nice because our team had a day off. So got to stay up a little later and watch the game.
Okay, so you guys were off. You were off
yesterday and today.
Oh, all right. So you didn't have to. You didn't have to like leave in the middle of the game to do a bus call or a loadout or anything like that.
Nope. Got to sleep in, watch the end of the game, and sleep in.
You know what really got me is the one game that went like 16 innings or 17 18 innings. I'm sitting there at 4 o'clock in the morning going, please, somebody just score a run so I can go to sleep.
That was the one game Los Angeles won.
I know.
And it's because everybody ran out of pictures. The guy that was the manager for the for Boston Red Sox, he was warming up in the bullpen, I think.
They had no players left. It was like playing a doubleheader that you didn't plan on.
So, Connor O'Brien, who is your favorite Red Sox player right now?
Oh, I say right now, when Donna mentioned that Manny Ramirez picture you posted, that brought back some memories. So I don't want to date myself, but I was in high school when they broke the streak. So
see, I told you.
I was
close. I said he was 4.
You know, during the National League playoffs, Pedro Martinez was one of the commentators.
Who's your favorite player now?
I think Pierce kicked ass.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Who's the cliffhanger pitcher? What's his name? Kimball. He scares the hell out of me.
Yeah.
He did not have a really good series. And I got to tell you, I didn't watch the team all that much this year. So I came right in and watching him, and I'm going, oh, my gosh, he's scaring the heck out of me because he's just not throwing strikes. Then he finally did.
But you know what? He gets the people out. Plus, he creeps them out with that hanging thing he does.
It's like
he used to play
Halloween.
for the Braves.
Yeah, I know. So I hear. How funny is that? But Pedro Martinez was hilarious because he was on the panel for the commentators during the National League Championship Series. And all I do is I can think of the Saturday Night Live skits. Baseball been very, very good to me.
All right, so let me ask you this. Big Papi or Manny Ramirez?
Oh, I would say Manny.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, see, I like
Manny's a goofball. That's why I like him so much.
Goofball.
Didn't he used to go through the Green Monster? He'd walk through that door and make cell phone calls and go to the bathroom and drink Gatorades and stuff like that.
But
he did this. He did that, Donna.
Did he really?
Yes. Right, Connor?
Yeah.
He did. We saw him in Atlanta, and it's like he's ADD. He just couldn't sit still.
He would stand out there in left field, Connor, and he had iPod. It was probably pre-iPod days, but he was listening to music while he's playing out in the outfield, and he's picking his hair, and he's scratching his butt, and he's doing all kinds of things because he can't stand still out there. And so this particular game that we went and saw him when he played in Atlanta, there's this fly ball to deep left field, and he's running back there, and he catches it before he gets to the warning track. And then he slams into the wall like it was some dramatic.
It was so hard.
It was some dramatic catch.
I don't know. See, that team had personality. I mean, this team was good. This team was really good, but that team had personality. This team was just a bunch of really hardworking guys.
What's the second baseman's name for Boston? Brock Hunt. Something like that. It's like the perfect second baseman name.
Don listens to his name and goes, he's got to be the second baseman. He goes, hey, he is the second baseman. All
right, so let me ask you this. As a diehard Bostonian, what was your moment outside of the actual victory? Was there any other big moments in this World Series?
Just the game that went 18 innings. I'm still out on the West Coast, so I was waking up around 12:30 or 1 a.m. and the game was just ending, and I just felt bad for all my family back home.
I made it through the 17th inning, and then I was out.
So Don and I are watching when they give away all the awards, right? And this guy Pierce wins the new Chevy truck, the pickup truck.
Yeah.
And we're thinking he's going to get this pickup truck, go right down the street to his local Ford dealer.
Trade it in on a
trade
Ford.
Trade it in on an F-250.
Yeah, you probably can't do that.
No, they probably make him drive it.
All right, so Connor, I mean, I know who you're out on tour with, but why don't you tell all the listeners who you're out on tour with and, without breaking the golden rule of being out on tour, what goes on the road stays on the road. Tell us a little bit about this tour and some of the size crowds, because these guys that you're out with are pretty big time.
Yes, yeah. I'm out with a group called 88 Degrees and Rising, which is kind of a conglomerate of Asian hip hop artists. And as strange as it sounds, they draw quite a crowd pretty much everywhere we've gone, all over the States and Canada. So.
Well, they're huge.
Didn't they come to Star Coaches, and you're standing there posing with this guy, and then
one of them.
You send a picture to your son, and your son's going, "Dad, this guy's huge."
Oh,
and Don's like oblivious.
I just thought he was some guy walking around, and he ends up being one of the big guys. But now it's a collection, a group of artists that are touring all together, and as you said, they're all Asian, but they're like from Korea, Japan, China. Where are they all from? I mean, am I right in that?
Yep, they're from all over. a couple of them are, live in the States now. They're based in LA or New York, but yeah, that's them and that's their fan base. There's a lot of Asian people.
And the guy that I hung out with and met at the yard and didn't realize who he was is what's his name?
I think you met Rich Bryan.
Yeah. And is he rich?
That's why they call him Rich Bryan.
And he's like what?
Richard.
He's like 19 years old, isn't he?
Yeah, he's 19 or 20. Yeah.
And he loved my sidearm. He loved my pistol. I don't remember which one I had with me that day. I
Did
think
you have
I
your
had the
cowboy
six.
hat on too?
I think so.
See, people love. I'm telling you, people from the Oriental culture. My ex-mother-in-law, same thing. Loved cowboys. Loved John Wayne.
You honky-tonk cowboy. You like Garth Brooks. You like Clint Brackett.
That's an inside joke, Connor.
You like Derbert McCrinton.
You need to explain that now, honey, because that sounds really racist.
No, it's not racist. I'm not racist. All right,
But that is.
So Connor, but some of these guys, from what I understand, and my oldest son Lee was out on tour for about
Lee?
2.5. Yeah, Ree was out on tour with the group. Ree Neuen. Ree Neuen, not honky tonk cowboy. Anyhow, Lee was out there with him, and he obviously knew who all these guys were. But now, the guys that were on his bus, I think, didn't speak very much English. The guys on your bus do, right?
Yes. Yeah, and I've got the top, the 1 and 2 artists, the 2 main guys, and management on my bus. So it's a pretty, they're the ones that have seen it all and done it all, and it's a pretty relaxed bus. But the younger guys that are more up and coming, they got the party buses.
Yeah, and Lee was telling me that they can throw down if they need to, if they want to. Matter of fact, I think he told me that when you guys were in the New York area, that the guys on his bus on a whim decided to take an Uber from New York to Boston.
No.
Yeah.
I didn't hear about this.
Yeah.
It's
I
5
think that's
hours.
what he said, yeah.
It's 5 hours.
Doesn't matter when you got tons of money.
When you're, what's his name? Mr. Rich?
No, that wasn't Rich Bryan.
Oh, okay.
But Rich Bryan went under another name before he went to the name of Rich Bryan, right?
I believe it was Rich Chiga.
And we're going to be very careful how we say that.
Yeah, really.
Chigga, right?
Yes.
Yeah. But now he's just Rich Bryan.
No wonder he changed it.
He showed Connor. I don't know if you were around when he was showing me this. He lives in Southern California, so he can't go out and buy, weapon. Heck, he's not old enough. But he showed me this long rifle that he got that is an air gun, and it shoots lead bullets out of it.
An air gun?
An air gun.
Wow.
And he was shooting some kind of a fruit, like a watermelon or a big melon of some kind. And I mean, it was this stuff. They're deadly, but you can buy this stuff online. So
That's
that,
scary.
from what I understand, Dianne Feinstein's going to go after those before long. So before we let you go, because we got to get back to some business here, but first of all, congratulations to a Bostonian for once again having the Red Sox be the World Series champs this time of 2018. Donna and I, as you know, are huge Red Sox fans, so it was a wonderful culmination to that World Series, and congratulations to you as a hometown Beantown guy.
Well, thank you.
Before you go, share with the listeners, if you don't mind, and again, you got to be a little careful what you talk about when you're talking about being out on the road, but what is a typical day and night for an entertainer coach driver? Like the next time you take off, where are you going? What time are you going to be leaving? You got 4 buses out there. How many trucks have you got? Give us kind of an idea of what's going on with this 88 Rising Tour.
Yeah, this is a pretty big move every night. We've got 4 buses. 2 of us are hauling trailers, and 1 semi truck. Typically, we'll leave a city about 2 or 3 in the morning, get to the next city about 10 or 11 in the morning. Everyone starts waking up. The roadies go to work, and the bus drivers, tidy up the bus, do any little maintenance or odds and ends on the buses. Truck driver unloads the truck, and then we're off to the hotel to try to get some rest.
It sounds glamorous when you think about how cool is that. You're touring, you get to see the country. But John Lennon said it best many, many years ago. It's a hotel. It's in his case, it was a limousine back then. It's the venue. It's a hotel. It's a limousine. It's a venue. And that's pretty much what it is. You don't really get to see the cities unless you get a day off or two.
And even then you don't.
That's right, yeah.
That's true.
I've been all over the United States and all over Canada, and I've been every place and seen nothing.
Yeah, that's terrible.
And that's pretty much the way it is, isn't it?
Good way to put it. We did just get some seafood, some good seafood out here in San Francisco.
Is that where you are right now? Are you avoiding the feces on the sidewalk and the hypodermic needles?
And the tent cities.
Oh, wait a minute. The last time you were in San Francisco, didn't some guy try to throw feces on you?
Yep, that me and Sam.
Are you serious?
All right, well, listen, we got a couple of minutes. Let's talk about this.
Have you seen Stacey Abrams out there raising money for her gubernatorial candidacy here in Georgia? She was there for a week raising money from the elites in San Francisco. Unbelievable. Now, she comes back and disses the workers, the agricultural workers in this
All right,
state.
Without saying the S word, because we have to comply with the FCC, bring that story back about the guy that tried to throw feces on you and Sam.
So this was, I won't even say the name of the venue, but at this particular venue, we pulled kind of an illegal move with the buses. We turned around on a one-way street so that our passenger door opened on the sidewalk. So our guys didn't have to open the doors into traffic. And opening the door onto the sidewalk, arguably just as bad because there were two homeless guys sleeping in a stairwell at this venue. Sam and I, it was early in the morning, so Sam and I walked around the corner to get some breakfast. And when we came back, the security at the venue was trying to wake the guy up. And, they're kicking him and pouring water on him and stuff. And then he finally got up. And it wasn't a plastic bag. I believe it was like the plastic wrapper of a case of water, bottled water. He stood up, yelled at the venue security, pulled his sweatpants down, relieved himself into this plastic wrapper, and then came back down to the sidewalk and said, "Now, who wants this hepatitis bomb?"
Jeez Louise. And they wonder why people are getting
by
sick.
The bay.
And it was such a beautiful city before. It's being ruined by these idiot leftists. The whole state is being ruined.
So what is it? I mean, where are you guys? You don't need to tell me the hotel, but are you in downtown San Fran right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
And our buses are parked down at the AT&T ballpark. So
is it getting worse, or is it getting any better? Does it look a lot worse than last time?
Is it an S-hole?
It's the strangest like juxtaposition of the most affluent, progressive, intelligent, all of these, technology, they're on the cutting edge of everything, and also the lowest of the low.
Well, that's what communism and socialism is, the haves and the have-nots, nothing in between.
Yep.
Now, are these photos that we see online of San Francisco where you got guys out there in hazmat suits power washing the sidewalks and collecting these piles of syringes and feces?
Making $180,000 a year doing it.
Is that what do you really see that when you're there?
We did see a little bit of that today, yeah.
I don't believe this is unbelievable. It's like another.
Yeah.
We were there we were there when Obama got elected, and it was a beautiful city. In 8 years, it's gone into a S-hole, quite frankly.
All right, so we only got a couple of minutes left here. And, Donna, we're not going to be able to really get to too many headlines because we're having too much fun with Connor McO'Brien.
Yep.
And, Connor, so you've been almost every place in the United States and almost every place in Canada. Now, let's forget about Canada because they're just now a bunch of potheads. We actually, have you seen an aerial photo of Canada lately? It's always got a cloud above it. Always. So let's forget about the potheads in Canada. But give me 2 other cities that you would consider S-hole cities in the United States.
Ooh, yeah. Besides San Francisco, the first one that comes to mind is Vancouver, but that's not in the States. And we were just up there.
Close enough for rock and roll. It's a socialist, communist regime.
So what's so bad about Vancouver?
It's just like San Francisco.
Oh, nice.
How about Seattle or Chicago?
Yeah.
How are they doing?
I don't mind. I like Seattle. I like Chicago too. They both, the places we end up going, the theater districts and the arenas and stuff like that is usually pretty clean and friendly. So,
all right. Well, what about Portland, Oregon?
Portland's a little worse than Seattle. I like Seattle. I don't like Portland as much.
Denver?
I love
everybody's
Denver.
high.
I've got, yeah.
It's Rocky Mountain High, literally.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let me ask you this, because we've got 2 minutes left here.
We're never going to be able to explain.
Well, we don't need to do updates. We've got Connor on here, and we're talking about bow socks and life on the road, and then we're going to get real serious for the last 3 segments. But, Connor, outside of Boston and Roopville, Georgia, where you have visited, where we live, what do you consider to be the greatest city in the United States?
Greatest city? I like New York. I like everything about New York, but I would never live there.
I felt that way, too, and I worked there for 35 years.
Yeah. I do like New York, regardless of the rivalries between them and Boston, but yeah, that's always a fun time. And then I like going out to Long Island and Queens and stuff.
Long Island.
That's all New York.
Say Long Island.
Long Island. Long Island.
Like the Long Island.
Long Island.
Long
Island.
Yeah.
Staten Island.
All right, so before you go, buddy, because we got to go to break, I need for you to say, hey, Don, I want you to park the car in Harvard Yard.
Don, I need you to park your car in Harvard Yard.
Excellent, my friend. Donna, who do we have coming up on the big show tonight? Connor O'Brien, thank you so much for joining
Connor.
us, especially given the fact
guys.
you have to drive tonight?
No.
Okay, well, especially given it's a night off for you. And tell Sean Blackwell that we send our best to him, too.
Another nice Irish boy. Hey, 1 week to vote, folks. 1 week until we continue Trump's agenda or have gridlock with Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House. Coming up, we'll be talking to a guy named Arthur PERELESS. He is talking about the employment challenge, not the unemployment, but the employment.
In the digital age.
Yes, in the digital age. Tom Harris talking about the environment, and Major Scott Huesing, author of Echo in Ramadi and SaveTheBrave.org. It's coming up next on Cowboy Logic Radio.
Hoorah!
Check us out on the web at cowboylogic.us.
Welcome back to Cowboy Logic Radio. I'm
Hold on a second, Donna. I just had to mute your mic. Welcome back. Hey, welcome back to Cowboy Logic Radio, ladies and gentlemen. Let me tell you, we're having a really big show right now. This show's about to get big balls. I'm telling you, big, huge balls. Donna, why don't you introduce our next guest? To you. Hey, back to you, Donna.
I'm sorry. You growing up in Atlanta, actually, it's really not too bad a Jersey accent.
I thought it was pretty.
Some
It's a cross between Philly and Jersey,
Yeah,
don't you think?
I think so.
There's no Long Island
No,
that's
but-
going on with my with my accent.
But we are going to take the Cowboy Logic listeners up to Jersey right now.
Here we go.
Yep.
Get ready.
The Jersey Shore, to be exact. And that would be to interview one Arthur PERELESS. Now, Arthur is the CEO of PERELESS Systems, which in 2000 was started to meet the growing demands of the talent acquisition, corporate recruiting marketplace. In other words, hiring people. And the thing is, Art, well, first of all, welcome to Cowboy Logic Radio. How you doing? You doing okay?
Hey, Don and Donna. Hey, thank you very much for having me today. It's a pleasure to speak to both of you.
Well,
hey, I'm doing okay. How you doing?
Yo,
See, I do it in reverse. See, normally, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that aren't familiar with how things happen in Jersey, person A asks person B how they're doing. Right, Donna?
Yeah.
Isn't that how it's done?
but then they have to answer back, how you doing?
I know, but see, I throw a little bit of a twist on there. I start off with telling people how I'm doing, and then I ask how they're doing. So with Art, I would say, "Hey, I'm doing pretty good, Art. How you doing?"
how you doing?
See, in that way, even if Art doesn't ask me how I'm doing, he knows. Do you see the logic behind that, Donna?
No, not really.
Oh, come on.
I guess I do.
Only in Atlanta.
Only
Yeah,
Atlanta, that's
exactly.
true.
Hey, man, welcome to Cowboy Logic Radio. So let's talk about the hiring of individuals, especially now that last week I read an article where there's a Japanese restaurant company or a Japanese company that's come up with artificial intelligence folks that are going to be chefs. What are you battling with something like that, man?
Well, I tell you, this industry in the last 20 years has just been tremendously dynamic. Prior to, starting this company, all the processes around recruiting and HR were very disparate. People were building things on Excel spreadsheets. It was very time-consuming, laborious. And in those days, companies like ours were pioneers in coming out with a single interface that they could do all of this hiring and managing, corporate recruiting through one software application. That's what we bring to the market. That's what we really try to improve every day. Now, this market has grown. It's dynamic. It twists and turns every day. If you think you're going to come into a company and not have the dynamics just going crazy every day, this is not for you. But I'll tell you, the greatest thing that's happening now is this artificial intelligence. I mean, if you go back as far as to IBM and what they've done with their product Watson and just how it's, if you've ever watched it on Jeopardy and how it plays against the human being, it's just amazing. And machine learning is just that. It constantly learns over time, and it takes the data, massages that data into such an algorithm that it allows it to be smarter and get smarter. So I think one of the great things about what you just said about this company with the chefs is the fact that they're building a model that's going to allow them to predict who the next star is going to be. So I think AI is a natural progression into the HR recruiting space. It's going to allow companies to not only look at process, but control, and then be able to build that perfect model over time where they're hiring much more efficiently and at a greater rate. And one last thing I'll add to this is attrition numbers in every company are a bottom line killer. Prior to HR software and analytics coming out there, people never really got the gist of this. But if you think about it, if we hire 10 people, 20 people, or even 100 people in a Fortune 500 company a month, if we fire half of those people, it's cost us a tremendous deal on the bottom line. CEOs, CFOs are starting to get a grasp of this. They're putting in more technology that's going to help us over time. So that's really this software space, this HR space, very dynamic. We haven't seen we've seen 10-year record growth in our economy, 30-year record low in unemployment, and I don't see an end to it. I mean, just how it's rolling up and how our country is getting more attuned to technology, and we need more specialists in that place, and it's growing the market.
See, that's what gets me. We have record low unemployment. I'm going to sound like Sean Hannity. Record low unemployment for blacks, Hispanics, women, really across the board. and there's help wanted signs out everywhere. But on the other hand, Arthur PERELESS, you're telling us that with artificial intelligence, we're going to have less and less hirees in order to save money. Is this going to be a problem down the road for humans?
Well, I think we got to just back up 1 second, and you made a good point there that we have record low unemployment, but you're still seeing massive amounts of hiring. But it's more of it in a specialized space. If you think about it, 4 to 10 times more people in the software security space in specialized roles like that. I just think that there's people coming out of college today don't have all these soft skills, and we have to be more cognizant of that and get them rolled into this economy, this digital economy. That makes sense.
Absolutely. Let me ask you this, Art. We've got kids that are going to colleges, and they're basically going to two types of higher education. They're coming out of high school, they're going to tech schools, which I find to be invaluable for long term. We're always going to need welders. We're always going to need electricians. We're always going to need mechanics. But then you've got kids that are going to a traditional university. They're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to go for 3 or 4 or 5, 6, 7 years. If you were going to advise that individual of what they need to be doing, where they need to be focused for what you're seeing 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, when they may be able to recoup that financial expense of college, where do you direct them? Where do you point them to?
Well, okay, so I have 2 boys right now. I got one in the University of Delaware who's a senior, and I have one at Penn State who's a junior. And my oldest son is an engineer. And I'll tell you, the job market for engineers today are tremendous. Our infrastructure is going to need to be rebuilt in this country, and it's going to need some of the brightest minds today. Just in New York City alone, you could see this, just the growth, the sprawling buildings and so forth. He's fortunate enough to come out of college and already have a position in his senior year. So that, to me, tells me something. Now, my other son, he's following that IT road. Now, he wanted to go into finance. But I told him, I said, look, finance is becoming like everything else. It's becoming mechanical. So why don't you start looking at the mechanics of products that help the financial industry, or, and that all leads back and flows into IT. And I just think, this economy is a digital economy. These children grew up, or men, women now grew up in a time where that's all they know. So why not leverage that and take it, into the next level? We, like I said, we have interns at our company every summer, and I just think that's invaluable for me, because I'm starting to see how this younger generation adapts to software. So it's just a perfect circle. And I think if they can all, understand, obviously not everybody's going to want to do that. We still need chefs. We still need things in our country. So, but it's a bright spot where hiring is just really taking control.
We're talking with Arthur PERELESS. He's the CEO of PERELESS Systems. And basically what he does is he provides an easy-to-use software application that allows companies to attract and hire the best talent for open positions. And obviously, with record low unemployment, the cream of the crop is getting hired. Great information there about engineers and IT. That really, if I had a young kid, is where I would tell my son to go at this point as well. Arthur, talk a little bit about, though, the importance of social media.
Oh, that's just a dynamic in itself. Social media has opened up just communication through various channels that we've never seen before. I mean, you could turn on something in the news and it's tweeted out just as it's happening. It's real time. It's all the time. So it's changed our life in the fact that it's allowed us to become more integrated into the world of real time. And I think that's good and that's bad, because just today there's a shooting in Pittsburgh in a synagogue. You knew about it before most of the people in Pittsburgh, because it's being tweeted out by the law enforcement and everything else. So I don't know. It's just that it just changes that dynamic. But let's talk about it on a corporate sense, how it's helped. Back in the days when I was first introduced to the labor market and jobs, I'd have to go. I got my Series 6, Series 7, and they'd give me a book to cold call, and I'd get these doctors on the phone. I'd try to push these stocks and so forth. Today, if you try to cold call someone on the phone as a salesperson, you're getting voicemail. No one interacts personally anymore with anyone. So how do you create leads? How do you create the buzz about your company in today's marketplace? Of course, you use LinkedIn, you use Twitter, you use all the social media tools that people are on a daily basis, and you're trying to just throw that little net out to bring people in. And really, today's day and age, selling is more letting people understand the value of the product you're trying to sell rather than trying to shove something down their throat. So people are much more educated in this space, especially with technology, and it's very competitive. And, I just think it's, for us, thank God it's here.
I couldn't agree with you more that social media is the ultimate tool to promote either oneself or one's product or one's company. I do it all the time. Let me ask you this, though. I am an old school guy when it comes to hiring people. And I'm going to share with you a few things that I'm sure you're way ahead of the curve on, way far in front of me on it. But let's say John Doe fills out an application. He wants to come to work with the company that I run. The first thing that I look at when I pull out his resume is I basically turn it over. I'm not real interested in what his resume has to say because his resume is going to tell me what he thinks I want to know. So when I end up getting to the resume, maybe in preparation for my interview with him, the one thing that I'm looking at are holes in his resume. I'm looking at what's not there.
Right.
And I want to know what was going on during those times. But more than anything, I stay away from a resume because I find it to be nothing but a bunch of bull. It's what they want me to think and what they want me to see. And what I want to find out is what he's not putting on that resume. Now, with a platform like you've got, how would you advise a prospective employer to be able to read between those lines in that platform that you've got when people are going online specifically looking for individuals to hire?
Great question. So Don and Donna, that's something we're always challenged with, right? Especially back in the day. We're looking at things subjectively also as recruiters. That's another problem, right? Because, hey, this person doesn't turn me on because they went to a different school or my competing school of mine, or maybe just something silly like that. But in today's day and age, with the software analytics that are out there, you can actually, companies today have the availability to build specific applications or job questions, knockout questions. And now we just finished our artificial intelligence build out, our first phase of it. And it's now looking at the dynamic of the algorithm of the resume versus what they need in the job order. So there's just a lot of different things happening there. So companies are being very intelligent about their hiring, and they're putting in direct attributes that they need to see. And then people are going on these applications, and they're checking whether they have these things or not. And what's happening with that, to expedite the whole process, is that as that information comes into the database, it's doing a selection process of the top percentage of people that are most likely to win that position. So, I think there is no more, you can't BS around this anymore because it's in your face, it's real time, and it's hard questions, and it's a selection process. So it allows companies to expedite the process. If you put out an administrative assistant on the internet, you're going to get 500 applications.
Right.
How feasible is it to go through 500 applications? You have to have a pre-facing selection process. And that's what companies are putting into the software. So once someone does put in their information, that's not the only thing that's being calculated. It's more of how they're answering industry-specific, job-specific questions to see if they are, the next hire. And then also education And then also, I think the gaps of employment.
Yeah.
Why did this person work 6 months here, leave, 6 months here, leave, 6 months here, leave? There's probably various reasons, but that would be a red flag.
Yeah, probably for the same reason that he'll work with his future company for 6 months and leave. Let me hit you with a real politically incorrect, probably inappropriate question to be asking on the air, but what the hell? This is Cowboy Logic Radio.
Uh-oh.
And this is New Jersey.
Yeah, there you go. All right. When you and I find friends and people that we want to associate with outside of the workplace, we usually gravitate to people that have common views, common perspectives, common ideology. I think that's safe to say.
I would agree.
Now, I'm moving in a political direction with this. I'm sure you figured that out. But if you own a private company, you're placed under restrictions of equal employment opportunity, and you can't discriminate who you hire. And I appreciate
Correct.
that. But at the same time, why would a company not look at future employees the same way they look at future friends, maybe a future spouse or a church that they want to go to, whatever? You want to hang around, and in that company, you want to hang around with people that are like-minded. Why would anybody want to hire somebody that has an ideology that's the antithesis of the foundation of that company or the foundation of the owners of the company? How do you get around something like that? And let's use liberals as an example here. Let's say that I'm a flaming progressive liberal that is starting up a company and is looking for some individuals, say in the engineering field or say in the technical field, the IT field, and I don't want to hire conservatives because they don't share the same values, as odd as they may be, with me, this liberal guy that's running this company. How do I legally not hire a conservative?
Well, I don't think there's any way you legally don't hire a conservative. I think that the question you're asking me, in my 20 years, and so be it, I employ everybody, mostly people from 25 or 22, 23 years old, right out of college, to people that are, in their 30s now. It's a very young workforce. And one of the things that I was tasked with, and I think building a culture is more important than liberal views or conservative views, just for the fact that in my 20 years, we've never had a real political discussion in the office. And I don't know if it's because the dynamic of having younger individuals, but the biggest stretch that I've ever found, and I've lost a lot of great people over the years. I've got rid of some people that were, not in line with the culture. But the biggest thing that we have is building a culture where everybody respects each other. Everybody is digging in and working and then sharing in all the fruits. So it's hard for me to answer that just for the fact that I haven't had that dynamic. But like I said, the biggest thing for me was building this culture where everybody is just harmonious.
That's good.
And I think that's also somewhat utopian. I mean, the bottom line is, I personally may not want to hire somebody that is going to support the political agenda of a party that is working against the best interest of a small business. I mean, that to me is just kind of good business to do that. Yeah, but it's also, you got to be real careful.
The differences weren't so bad, though, as they are recently. I mean, it really is jobs versus mobs right now, but that's another story. Arthur, how many people do you actually have at Pereless Systems right now in your employment?
So 40 full-time, part-time individuals, and then we have a lot of consultants that because you have to understand in this digital economy that we live, this on-demand economy, we have people up at our data centers. We have people across the country, across the world, lawyers, so forth. One of the things that just came out was GDPR, and that is the idea of it's social media and tools like ours, the availability of people to go ahead and opt out of these social tools, the right to be forgotten, So
Yeah.
in Europe right now, there's a huge push in that. So there's where we have to employ lawyers. We have to employ data centers in those countries. And, you incur expense, but it also brings you to a global market. So it's just amazing, just everything that's happening in this industry.
Well, you got 14,000 illegals marching toward the border right now. You could possibly tap into. I'm being sarcastic.
Potential employees and voters.
Yeah, really. All right. You're based in New Jersey. Again, folks, we're talking to Arthur PERELESS. He's CEO of PERELESS Systems. And really, you're a Forbes contributor as well. But PERELESS Systems is based in New Jersey, but you just said it's certainly not limited locally. You work globally, correct?
That's correct. I mean, the internet has opened up our borders without us being anywhere but New Jersey. So we could be in our footy pajamas at our computer terminal and tap it into the world.
All right. Well, I'm going to ask you a very simple question. Given the fact that you're probably enduring bone-crushing taxes in New Jersey, why have you not already done that and made that move someplace else where you're not getting browbeaten by taxes so badly?
Well, that's a good point. And, we do pay some of the highest tax rates in the country. Our insurance rates are through the roof. Our company offers a 60-40 split with our employees on insurance. We offer a matching 401k at 6% of what they contribute. Yeah, those costs are relevant. And I just think that Jersey's my home. I'm at the Jersey Shore. I've worked away from New Jersey many years. I yearn to get back here. Why?
Well, and I can't blame you for that, man. I mean, you got some of the best roads in the country up there, and you got those damn jug handles that I'm yet to figure out what
Don
the hell.
Hates
I can't
jug handles.
It doesn't. I mean, it's like it goes against my DNA for some reason. A jug handle, but
Why can't I make a left turn from the left lane? That's what keeps yelling. Why can't I make a turn? It's so funny.
Ask people in Myrtle Beach why.
Yeah,
because that infrastructure is growing and blowing out, and now you got people trying to make a left into oncoming traffic. That's just insane. So,
well, the beauty of the jug handle concept is on every damn corner up there, you got a Dunkin' Donuts. So if you need to, you go into the jug handle and you go grab a Dunkin' Donuts coffee and donut. So there is an upside to it.
Arthur, how can people get hold of your company? And maybe if they're looking for a job, sounds like your company itself is awesome with the great benefits you have. How can they get hold of PERELESS Systems?
Yeah, they can just any internet browser, www.pereless.com. Once again, www.pereless.com. My fault.
What exactly, we have a couple of minutes left. What exactly do you find to be the most, the biggest problem? Again, because things change so fast. I mean, I'm thinking back when I started at Fox in the late 1999s, early 2000s. I mean, we just had laptops. That was it. And when I came down here to Atlanta, even 10 years ago, I mean, people barely had cell phones. Now, all of a sudden, you can get your emails on your cell phones. Everything's immediate. And the kids today, this younger generation's never even going to know anything but that. I mean, it just seems to be a huge challenge.
Well, I just think the convergence of all this different hardware and media into a more consolidated product like a phone, a smartphone is just brilliant. The challenges we always have is the fact that building your websites and everything to react to those sites so they're not too laborious for the end user, right? So that's our big challenge in the industry. But I just think that if you look at today's day and age, it's almost email's going to become obsolete because everybody texts. That is where this dynamic is pushing. So I think it becomes, more strategic. It becomes more just granular with regards to the products that are being used at that time. And, what's next from texting? Who knows? But I just see that dynamic shift happening right now.
Absolutely. Arthur PERELESS Systems. Find him at PERELESS PERELESS.com. That's PERELESS.com. You're a Forbes contributor as well. And on the cutting edge of hiring people. That really is basically the dynamic of it, and it's very exciting. Arthur, thank you so much for joining us here on Cowboy Logic Radio.
It's been a pleasure, Tom and Donna. Thank you.
And coming up next, we'll be talking to Tom Harris about the environment, and Major Scott Using, author of Echo in Ramadi and SaveTheBrave.org. It's all coming up next on Cowboy Logic Radio.
Come on, take him, my dark sunglasses. Come on, take him, my dark sunglasses. Come on, take him, my dark sunglasses. Come on, take him, my dark sunglasses.
Check us out on the web at cowboylogic.us.
Hello, everyone. I'm Donna Fiducia.
And I'm Don Neuen, and this is Cowboy Logic Radio.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. When their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glare. Yes, back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance.
Welcome back to Cowboy Logic Radio. I'm Donna Fiducia along with Don Neuen. And our very special guest this half hour is making his debut on Cowboy Logic Radio, or his debut, as my father used to say. And that is a gentleman by the name of Tom Harris. He is executive director of the International Climate Science Coalition. He's published across the U.S. and Canada. Basically, the UN is saying, Tom, that the planet is going to reach a crucial global warming threshold by 2030. We're all going to die. Tom Harris, welcome to Cowboy Logic Radio.
Yeah, that's pretty silly. It's interesting that as public interest seems to be waning, according to the recent polls, the rhetoric is just getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And they're even saying now that we're going to have to start taking CO2 out of the air. And that sounds a little scary when you consider that we're far closer to a danger low level of CO2 where plants would start to die than we are to any high level.
Then we are actually going to die if they get rid of the CO2. That actually would be. I mean,
that's right.
CO2 is good, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. In fact, numerous studies show that it's aerial fertilizer, okay, and improving agricultural productivity by as much as at least 15% over the last little while because of CO2 rising. And later on, I'll find the statistics, but there's actually a number here which talks about the increase in crop productivity, the actual value of that, and I'll find that in a second here. But the bottom line, here it is. Greg Itzo of Arizona has estimated that more grain yield in the last 25 years can be translated to about $13 trillion of beneficial impacts of more CO2. And that was sent to me by an extreme weather expert just a couple of hours ago. So, I mean, the whole idea that we're going to reduce CO2 to save the planet, no, it should be the other way around. We should be increasing CO2, many scientists say, intentionally, because, it can help us feed the billions of people that have yet to be born.
What a novel idea.
Yeah, food.
Hey, Tom, this past week, our friends down in the Gulf states endured the wrath of Hurricane Michael. Now, if you pay attention to the mainstream media and the mainstream weather guys, it's clear that Donald Trump has caused this hurricane to happen. And I want to get your expert analysis on the level of responsibility that Donald Trump will share in the damage assessment of Hurricane Michael.
Well, maybe he should also be responsible for the fact that this has been, generally speaking, a much less severe year than last year. So Donald Trump's responsible for the good things, too.
But he was in office last year. He was in office last year, so it's his fault there, too. So, he can't
that's right.
win.
Everything's his fault.
He can't win.
Obviously, I'm kidding with this, Tom, but tell me this. How do these mental midgets that are actually spewing forth this nauseating agenda expect anybody to take them seriously? And those that do, what the hell's wrong with them?
Well, I think the polls are showing that people are not taking them very seriously.
Good.
Gallup did a poll just a few months ago, and they said, what was the leading problem facing America? And they gave them all sorts of things. And global warming was so small, it was included in the 2% that was just general environmental. And of course, that would include things like, pollution and toxic waste dumps and all sorts of things. So global warming was somewhere in that 2% of the population that thought it was the most important issue. Now, the UN, of course, are the ones that are always telling us this is an existential threat. This is the greatest threat to humanity. So they put out a poll called My World, and they asked the world, and anybody can vote. If you go on the UN website and you search My World, you'll find that about 10 million people around the world have chosen what they think are the top priorities for the UN and for governments to focus on. Now, the UN is a little biased because, of course, they're hoping you choose climate change. They list it first in the list of priorities that you're supposed to pick from. But after 10 million people have voted, climate change ranks dead last of the 16 issues that the world has been asked about. And, that's very revealing because it's supposed to be the most important issue. But in comparison with education and clean drinking water and freedom from war and starvation and things, climate change just does not matter to most of the people of the world.
I would assume also, and I didn't mean to cut you off, Donna, but I would assume that the only reason that people may have listed climate change as a threat to the world at all is because the UN put it on as an option of a choice.
Multiple
choice. If they'd have left it off of there, probably nobody would have voted for it.
To me, Tom,
the UN... The actual thing...
Go ahead.
I should clarify. The actual thing they said was action on climate change. I think those were the words. In other words, do they want... climate change affects people, of course, but do we want to take action on it? Do we actually want to try to stop it? That was the real question, if you read between the lines. And people just don't take it seriously.
Yeah. Well, it affects me 4 times a year. I'm about to start being affected by it when I put on a coat to go to work.
Yeah.
To me, the UN is the biggest threat. The UN itself is the biggest threat to our existence. I'm sorry. That really is the problem, not climate change. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of people are saying that the climate scare is actually an instrument to promote world governance. And that makes sense if you think about it, because if they're trying to control CO2, that really means they're controlling the world's energy, because over 80% of the world's energy comes from fossil fuels. And all the forecasts say that for the next 30 years, it's going to stay that way. So it's easy to remove real pollution from fossil fuel burning, things like particulates and sulfur dioxide and nitric oxide. That's fairly easy to take out. But taking carbon dioxide out is very difficult. And in fact, we don't even know if you can do it on a national scale and actually make it work and be economic enough to actually do. So what really happens is that if you're going to, basically try to greatly reduce CO2, in fact, they're calling for net zero CO2, okay? And the only way that would happen is if not only do you stop using almost all your fossil fuels, but you start to take it out of the atmosphere. And, that is a little bit scary to say the least. And so what they're really doing is an anti-fossil fuel agenda. And yet fossil fuels are our most abundant energy source. The United States is the Saudi Arabia of coal. We should not be turning those things off. We should be looking for new, clean ways to use them and try to find more resources. You have something like 3 centuries of reserves in the United States, and that's great. But, a lot of the world would love your coal if you would build more export stations on the West Coast.
To me, like you just said, it's follow the money trail. CO2, fossil fuels is the cheapest. If you're a millionaire, it doesn't bother you if you got to pay a little more to drive your car or to heat your home. But if you're poor, that means a lot. And that means a lot of people are going to be colder. And then they don't get into the whole thing of how terrible really the solar panels are and the wind turbines. They're chopping birds up en masse. And they have to actually stop periodically to clean off the blades. And so no one talks about what that does to the ecosystem, not to mention the fact you need coal and you need regular CO2 to get these stupid wind turbines moving and to also keep the solar panels going. It makes no sense.
That's right. Well, the greatest success of the climate change movement has been to get their cause identified as left-wing, because what that means is that most of the media, which are left of center, automatically support it without even really knowing anything about it. The trouble is the climate scare actually works against many of the causes that the left say they hold dear. And social justice is obviously one of them. In Ontario, because we got rid of our coal stations, that was the major driver of an increase in electricity prices of 200% from 2002 until today. Okay, so the bottom line is that doesn't hurt the rich, as you were saying, it hurts the poor. And so you would think social justice warriors would say, whoa, give us the cheapest form of power. But instead, they're pushing wind and solar. The other thing, of course, is that the push for climate action is promoting the use of biofuels, which transfers foodstuffs into fuel. And even the UN rapporteur for food security, I think his name was saying it's basically a crime against humanity when you do that sort of thing. There's other ideas, too, which, if you're concerned about birds, I mean, millions of birds and bats are killed by wind turbines. So, none of these solutions to the climate scare you would think would be attractive to left-wingers. And so that's what we point out. We say, look, if you're progressive, if you really support these other ideals, then you better take a better look at the climate scare to see if it's really necessary. The UN are saying that we're going to have all kinds of food shortages and stuff. Well, guess what? In 2007, the IPCC stated that grain yields would be reduced in the future if global warming continues. And now we have the highest grain yields ever. Okay, so, I mean, the data is just simply not there. Greenland's ice has increased in recent years. The Arctic ice was thinner in the 1920s and the 1930s than now. Okay, so all of these facts, all of these things that they can check out themselves. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has a database that I'll email to you, which shows you when all the extreme weather records were set for every state in the Union. And what you find is that in the whole of the 21st century, 18 years, there were only 2 extreme weather set for states in South Dakota and South Carolina, I believe. Just 2. You go back, and that's 18 years. You go back to the 1930s, and I think it was 1936, they had 15 state records set. Okay, other years in the 30s, there was like 5 or 6 records set per year. So people can just look at this database and do a search on a year. Let's say 2018. I did this search just before I went on air, and it's kind of fun. You find there was one record set in 2018, not for temperature, but it was set for the largest hailstone. They had a hailstone bigger than 5 inches in diameter in Alabama. Okay, so I suppose if climate's going to kill anybody, that hailstone could kill someone. But once you do the search and you keep searching and searching, and you find that in the whole 21st century, only 2 years did they have records, and it was just in 2 states. So I mean, the bottom line is for extreme weather, for extreme temperature. I mean, there's other records that are set at different times. But if you look at an overall picture, what you find is that there's no extreme weather records. In Canada, for example, droughts were more severe, not just Canadian prairies, but in the U.S. prairies in the 1920s and 30s than they are now. So I mean, the data is just not there. And that's why we encourage the left-wingers to have a look at the real data, because if it's not there, then why damage all their other causes?
Because it's about control. And if you email me that information, I'll be sure to forward it to Al Gore, okay? Just to inform him.
Sure.
Well, here's the bottom line. I think if people take a close look, every day there is some kind of a record that's being set or broken, right? Every day somebody's breaking a record, whether it has to do with weather or anything else. My question, and I'm being obviously sarcastic here, is at what year was the record broken and continue to be broken by left-wingers spewing forth misinformation for their agenda? Mm-hmm. And I would say that every year it keeps breaking its own record.
Yeah, I think last Monday was about the absolute record. I mean, if you read the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report, you know what crucial things will happen if we don't limit Earth's temperature rise to 1.5 degrees. It's as if we were some kind of god that had this magical control. That I think was the most extreme. And the thing that is a little disturbing out of it is this idea that they're recommending that we start taking CO2 out of the air. And, that has prompted other scientists to now start talking about this geoengineering thing. There was a report in ABC News, and I'll send it to you. It's talking about artificially setting off volcanoes to increase dust or things in the atmosphere to block the sunlight. I can't remember the whole article, but this whole idea of geoengineering, they're saying we have to take more seriously because, the Earth's climate is going to be a catastrophe. Well, let's say you start sucking CO2 out of the air, and let's say we go into a glacial period when CO2 naturally drops. In the last glacial period, we weren't that much above the lower level at which plants start to die, okay? So if we artificially remove CO2 from the air, maybe in the next glacial, which could be in a few centuries, we don't know, because we're right near the end of a warm interglacial period if you look at past ones, maybe CO2 will go too low. Maybe plants will start to die if we artificially start to remove CO2 from the atmosphere. So this is very dangerous. I mean, to me, it's very much like taking the back off your TV set and giving your 5-year-old a pile of tools and saying, could you fix my TV? I mean, something's going to go wrong, because the bottom line is we don't really understand natural climate change. And until we do, the idea that we should tinker with it, whoa, that's pretty dangerous.
Absolutely. Tom, let me reintroduce you. We're talking to Tom Harris. He's the executive director of the International Climate Science Coalition. All of his articles published many times during the day across the U.S. and Canada. The UN just coming out with saying that the planet's going to reach a crucial global warming threshold by 2030. You can find Tom, his website, the website for the International Climate Science Coalition is climatescienceinternational.org. That's climatescienceinternational.org. On Twitter, it's at Tom Harris, ICSC. That's International Climate Science Coalition. And also on Facebook, tom.harris.96343. You'll find all this information. Tom, you were out in San Francisco with a counter conference to the climate change conference that was going on out there. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it was the big global warming conference with Al Gore and the governor of California and leaders and entertainers and all sorts of famous people, almost no scientists. But I think they had something like 10,000 people show up. It never seems to cross people's minds that if they're telling us to reduce carbon footprint, that maybe they should teleconference. But regardless, they were meeting in San Francisco, and they were telling us it's the end of the world. We have to decarbonize, get rid of fossil fuels, which of course would be a disaster and kill probably hundreds of millions of people because we wouldn't have enough energy to make our food. But regardless, we held a panel at lunchtime during their lunch. We live streamed an event. The Heartland Institute organized it. People can go to their website, actually, heartland.org. They're a free market think tank. And they brought 6 of us into a panel discussion that was live streamed out of Oakland, out of the Independent Institute. And it's right here on their homepage, actually, if you scroll down a little bit. Yeah, that's right. It's right here. And heartland.org. And it's on our homepage, too. But we talked, and it was interesting because Stanley Goldenberg was there, and he's a hurricane expert who actually flies these aircraft, right through the edges of hurricanes to test out what's happening. And he sent me an email yesterday talking about how he was still recovering from doing it with Michael. And he said, caused by global warming, not in big capital letters. And he actually explained a lot of that. And so did the other experts that were there, explained that, look, CO2 is a benefit. Reliable, affordable energy is positively correlated with economic growth, and it helps people all over the world. And the idea that we have a global climate catastrophe coming, it's not there in the current data. This is all based on computer models of the future. And that's the kind of thing we talked about over the lunch hour, and we did the same thing the next day. And so as I say, it's live streamed. If you go to our homepage, you can see some of the links to it. And just recently, of course, the Heartland Institute put out a new report just three days before the IPCC report. It's the non-governmental International Panel on Climate Change, which is sort of fun because instead of IPCC, it's NIPCC. And people can take a look at that also on the Heartland homepage. Actually, it's their first issue, I believe, right now. Just take a look. Yes, that's right. It's called Climate Change Reconsidered 2, Fossil Fuels. And this is the summary for policymakers, so it's very readable. Jay Lear and I have written an article about it, which people can find on the web. But for now, if they take a look at heartland.org, they can see this new report. And they say things like there's no increase in the frequency or intensity of drought in the modern era. Rising CO2 lets plants use water more efficiently, helping them overcome stressful conditions imposed by droughts. In other words, it's basically saying the opposite of what the UN says. And unlike the UN reports, this is very readable and has, thousands of references as well. So we encourage people to compare the two sides and see what you agree with, because the bottom line is there is science all over the place, and certainly there's a lot of science against the UN, which you're not hearing in the press.
Well, as a conservative, I'm getting a little tired of the left-wing pukes constantly telling or spewing forth the fact that conservatives are not compassionate.
They want to kill everybody and dirty
climate.
Water and air.
I'm here to tell you, I drive a hybrid every day. I've got a hybrid Camry. I work about 140 miles round trip every day to work and back home. Now, here's the thing, though. I'm not arrogant enough to think that Don Neuen, one human being, is going to affect the climate of the earth by driving my hybrid into work. But I'm encouraging fellow conservatives to think about this. I drive my hybrid into work versus our F-350 diesel dually, and on a monthly basis, I am saving an enormous amount of money because I'm getting about 43, 44 miles to the gallon with my Camry. I can then turn around and pump that savings into the economy as opposed to the environment. Now, I could also donate it to environmental causes. So the bottom line, Tom, that I'm getting at here in a roundabout way is conservatives probably think along the same lines that I do, except we're kind of doing it for a little different reason, and that's to spur economy and to save money.
Well, yeah, and of course, a poor country does not protect their environment. I mean, if you look at Somalia, I don't imagine they're very concerned about environmental protection. It's something that we do once we've solved our basic problems, once we have a certain level of wealth. And that's interesting because you find that, with all of the charts which show the impact on the environment of increasing wealth in societies, it gets to a certain point, and then the impact starts to drop because, indeed, wealthier societies protect the environment better. So, and the sad thing is, when I was in Copenhagen, it wasn't just environmental protesters. They were also joined up with anti-capitalist protesters.
Yeah, it's all one big group. That's the problem. It's all one big group.
Yeah, and what they don't realize is that, look at the old communist countries after they fell and we got in and saw what was going on. You could hardly accuse them of being highly environmentally conscious. So, free market systems left to their own devices will bring in, not only less expensive energy, but they'll also bring in better environmental control because that's what the customer demands, and that's what we can eventually afford when we have enough wealth.
You're talking about how poor countries are much more have much more of a pollution problem. All you have to do is look at the Rio Grande. Look at Mexico, right across the river. It's a mess. I went to Moscow, same thing. The Moscow River was black when I was there, and you just don't think that. You think, well, there's just not a lot of stuff to throw away. They don't even have toilet paper, pretty much, and yet the environment was chokingly disgusting because they had no pollution controls on the cars, and they just threw everything right into the river. And that really is the bottom line. Because once Trump pulled us out of this UN climate control initiative, all of a sudden people started saying, well, it's kind of just more of a money grab. We have about 30 seconds left if you want to comment on that, Tom.
Yeah, sure. The UN are always saying that the whole world is being held to emission limits. Now, even if you went with the Paris Agreement, even if you thought that it was going to be enforced, China can increase all the way to 2030, okay? And then they don't talk about decreasing after that. But there's an out clause for developing countries, and people should look this up. The Paris Agreement and all the UN climate agreements are based on something called the Framework Convention on Climate Change. And it says point blank in Article 4 that the first and overriding priority for developing countries, not us, but developing countries, is poverty alleviation and development, okay? So they're not saying climate change. So since coal is their least expensive form of electricity, and that will help them in poverty alleviation development, you can see what's going to happen in 2030. They're going to say, no. It says right here, our first priority is poverty alleviation development. So, no, we're not going to close our coal stations. We're not going to stop growing with coal. And so essentially they have no limit because that is an out clause. And they cornered the Chinese ambassador about the Framework Convention in Peru. I think it was 2014 at the big UN conference. And he said, our point is to enforce the convention, not to change it. Exactly. So they know they have a great deal. They have a great deal. They don't really ever have to reduce emissions as far as I can tell.
Absolutely. Follow the money trail. # double standard. Well, Tom Harris, Executive Director of the International Climate Science Coalition, so great to have you on. It's nice to know finally somebody with common sense. A lot of people actually with common sense are looking into the hoax that climate science tries to push on us via the Al Gore side of this. ClimateScienceInternational.org is the website. On Twitter at Tom Harris ICSC, and also Facebook, tom.harris.96343. Tom Harris, thank you so much. ClimateScienceInternational.org for joining us here on Cowboy Logic Radio.
That's great. Thank you.
And we'll be back with more Cowboy Logic right after this.
Check us out on the web at cowboylogic.us.
Welcome back to Cowboy Logic Radio. I'm Donna Fiducia, along with Don Neuen. And our very special guest this half hour is a retired Marine, although they never do retire, from what everybody tells me, because you're always on guard. 24 years experience, 10 deployments, over 60 countries in Iraq, Afghanistan, the Horn of Africa, just to name a few. And that would be one Scott Huesing. Scott, you are making your debut here on Cowboy Logic Radio, but you've been heard all over our shows like the Denise Simon Experience and Audrey Russo, of course. You're the author of a book called Echo in Ramadi, and folks, you can find it on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Find some cool pictures at echoinramadi.com. SaveTheBrave.org is an organization he's part of, and we'll get to that in just a little while, Major. But let me tell everybody, you've been seen on Fox News Channel, One America News, Town Hall, major networks, our buddy David Webb's show as well, Daily Signal, the Military Times, the Marine Corps Gazette, among others. And you are the executive director of Save the Brave, which is a nonprofit that connects veterans through outreach programs. And that really is huge because with PTSD, nothing is better than veterans supporting veterans. And Major Scott Huesing, welcome to Cowboy Logic Radio.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on the show.
Hey, before we get into anything, ladies and gentlemen, in 2 weeks, we are going to celebrate a day with veterans. And it's something that should be taking place every day of the year. But, Major, I want to tip my hat to you and celebrate Veterans Day with you 2 weeks early, sir.
Well, yeah, I think that's awesome. It's so great to recognize veterans every day. And, you know, our culture rarely wants to talk about some of the things that are involved with war. And we do have special days throughout the year that, you know, commemorate them. And Veterans Day is a day when most Americans need to celebrate what our veterans do and understand everything that goes into serving their country and what we ask our young men and women to do for our nation to guarantee our safety and our freedom. And you're right, Don. Every day is Veterans Day as we are a nation at war, as we stand together as a nation, as we should be standing together. We have been at war for 17 years. So for me and my fellow brothers and sisters, every day is Veterans Day. Equally, every day is Memorial Day as we continue to lose soldiers and Marines during this long war. So it is a great day. I'm looking forward to being out in New York City this Veterans Day to do some shows out there and a speaking panel at the Half King with Sebastian Younger and Scott Anderson and some other authors. But it's going to be a great week. I'm looking forward to it as I am every year.
Well, I rarely disagree with a major, especially a Marine major. But I am going to take issue with one thing, and that is that the celebration and the appreciation of Veterans Day, when you just mentioned especially at times of war, which we are most certainly at. I don't know, man. I'm pretty celebratory when it's at times of peace, too. But that's a rare moment in history. Don't you agree?
No, I will agree with that. And, you know, again, I think that we as a nation have become a culture that, you know, we rarely want to talk about death or killing unless it's bolstered by some flowery parade or people waving flags, or on those days when you can smell hot dogs and, you know, charred hamburgers filling the air as small groups celebrate at the expense of those who served. You know, I would submit, how many times have you or your listeners actually served a veteran or a combat veteran of a hamburger, or any veteran for that matter? And, you know, Don, this is not some form of guilt patriotism that I espouse. This is the reality. This is what we talk about, this reality of the separation our nation has between those who've served and those who think they are supporting the troops. And for me, in the message I send, it's not just some bumper sticker you slap on the back of your pickup truck that says support the troops. You have to do more. You really have to put some skin in the game. And people like you and Donna, who have so many veterans on your program to tell these great stories of military heroics and understand the true meanings of those words, service and sacrifice. You guys are part of the solution, and I thank you for that.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, one of the things while we're talking about Veterans Day, and I'll make this quick because we really want to get into the book and we also want to get into Save the Brave. But one of the things that is oftentimes forgotten during both the celebration of Veterans Day and the remembrance of Memorial Day are the wives and the families. And so, ladies and gentlemen, our beloved listeners, this Veterans Day, let's not only remember the veterans, but let's remember the people that stood beside those veterans, stood waiting at home for those veterans, worried every damn night about those veterans until they did come home. Let's remember the wives and the families.
You know, Major, I have this sitting here next to my microphone that I refer to all the time because the mainstream media focuses on these 2,000 kids that were taken from their parents when they crossed the border illegally. Well, 2.7 million kids have a parent in prison. 400,000 kids are in foster care because most of those parents are in prison. And 765,000 kids are separated from their military parents, not knowing if they will ever see them again. Mainstream media never focuses on that, and I like to bring that up as much as possible. So, Major Scott Huesing, tell us about ECHO in Ramadi and your account supporting the multinational forces and the surge back then, and what ECHO in Ramadi is all about.
The book itself, when I wrote it, was really a tribute to the Marines and the soldiers and the families that supported us while we fought. And I'm so glad you talk about the families because I credit them a lot for the success we had of fighting and winning and surviving in what was the deadliest city in Iraq in 2006 during the surge strategy. And when I say it was the deadliest city, that's not hyperbole. It was absolutely the deadliest city. We lost more soldiers and Marines and wounded in that city throughout Al-Anbar province during the height of the insurgency in 06 and 07. But the story itself, I think when I first wrote it and when we launched the book in February and it became a bestseller, I used to tell people it was the story of fighting and friction, and it was about the leadership and team building and overcoming adversity. And those are all most certainly things that are included in the book because it's such an evergreen book about leadership and brotherhood. But as we've gone several months now, I think the message that I tell people when they say, what's the core message of this book, Scott? I don't hesitate, and I tell them it's about the power of human connection. It's about the people, and it's these Marines and soldiers, the families, our Gold Star families who lost everything. These people that I write about really sit at the front of the stage. And the bloody city of Ramadi, Iraq, and the streets we fought on day in and day out, sometimes 2, 3, 4, 5 times a day in direct contact with a well-trained insurgent force, that serves as a backdrop for this entire story, I think, because it really is about the people. And that's what I wanted to share was this story of people, not about things or events or some military chronology of war, but a story of people. And that was the most important thing to me.
Let me ask you about the book itself. And again, everybody, it's called ECHO in Ramadi. You can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can go to echoinramadi.com to see some of the pictures. How important was it to work? I mean, this is multinational forces. That's what's so unbelievable to me, how you were able to work across all these various cultures.
It was challenging, to say the least, and we were part of the 15th Marine Expeditionary Unit that was part of the surge strategy that was ordered by General Abizaid and General Petraeus at the hand of George W. Bush when they flooded the battle space with an additional 20,000 troops to really hammer down on the insurgency. Because up until that point, it had become what I described as this giant game of whack-a-mole in cities like Najaf and Baghdad, Fallujah, Ramadi. They would pop up and we'd hammer them back down to the ground. They'd kind of bleed out, and then they'd pop up in another city. So when we flooded the battle space in 2006, we were really able to apply pressure in all of those cities. Our unit, our company, Echo Company, 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines, and Fox Company were sent to Ramadi. We worked for the Army, 1st Brigade Combat Team, and all of the subunits. So we were really farmed out as kind of, I use the term scab labor, to cover down on these hot pockets of resistance. And that's what we did. And the city of Ramadi itself had become this boiling pot of insurgents and some of the most well-trained fighters in the region. And it literally was boiling over the stove into the burners, and you just couldn't shut the gas off. That's how bad the fighting, that's how intense the fighting was. And for us, being thrust into that chasm of war, it really redefined what we knew about urban warfare. It really redefined what we knew about fighting at the lowest sense of the term.
Let me just reintroduce you here, Scott. We're talking with Major Scott HUESING. He's a combat leader, 24 years experience, 10 deployments, over 60 countries, and he's the author of the best-selling book that was out earlier this year, Echo in Ramadi. Again, find it at Amazon or echoinramadi.com if you want to see some of the more of the details about the book. And Don had a question.
Well, during the break, Major, you and I were talking, Donna and I were talking about a mutual friend. And you told me something I didn't know that I found fascinating, that I think the listeners also would find interesting and almost just kind of a whoa moment.
It's a great story.
And that was a mutual friend by the name of Johnny Walker. Now, we've had Johnny on our show. Denise Simons had Johnny on her show. I'm sure Audrey's had him on her show. We never knew what you and I and Donna talked about on the break coming into this segment, and that was that you and Johnny actually were fighting against each other, and then he became an interpreter X number of years later, and he was actually fighting with you in Iraq.
Right.
Do you mind sharing that story very briefly?
And how did he change sides?
Well, Johnny's story is remarkable, and he is the subject and co-author of Codename Johnny Walker with Jim DeFelice. A great book. I highly recommend it. But as I'm reading through this book, and I already know Johnny, okay? We're here in Temecula, California at the wineries, and we're hanging out. We're good friends now. We work on some projects together. But he and I were both young enlisted soldiers during Operation Desert Storm during the first Bush administration. And so we essentially fought against each other. I mean, not directly. We weren't shooting rifles at each other, but we were combatants. And then some 15 years later, we're thrust into this new war, this long war that we're fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan. And Johnny is now an interpreter for U.S. Special Forces, and we're both fighting the insurgency in Iraq together, in the city of Ramadi together, not even knowing each other. And then come to find out, we become best-selling authors and we share our stories, and that's what brings us together. And people like you and Pete Turner and Joel Carpenter at Speaker's Buzz, they brought us together. And so now we hang out. We both live in Southern California, and we're working on projects together. And it's just an amazing connection of not only people who go through such adversity and then are willing to share their stories and have the capacity to share, but Johnny, as an interpreter in Iraq, he's another great American success story, much like the interpreters I write about in Echo and Ramadi, who served their country as these great young Iraqi patriots, which I say are kind of akin to those of our American Revolution. They want to help their country. They're very patriotic. And so they risked everything to join the coalition, to join the multinational forces, to help us speak the language, which was so vital to us being successful on the battlefield. Without our interpreters, we would have failed miserably, day in and day out. They're absolutely instrumental. And to share their stories and to think about their sacrifice as well, a guy like Johnny or a guy like Big Sam, who was one of my interpreters, these guys, to them, I was just one captain of many that was a commander at the time in 2006 that they dealt with. These guys were fighting the insurgency for 3, 4, 5, in Johnny's case, 7 years straight. I mean, we've only experienced that type of fighting since World War II, where guys would just go off to war for 2 or 3 years. But these young men, 18, 19 years old in some cases, these Iraqi interpreters, they fought for years on end. That's all they knew. And they did it for maybe a couple $1,000 a month. And the pride they had in their country, knowing they were making a difference.
Can you speak a little bit about Islam and the cultural differences? Because, something like World War II, there was more of a Judeo-Christian ethic on all sides there. You've got, with Islam, a culture that basically says, we're inferior. We're the infidels. And yet, how do you work around that and trust it? Really, how do you come to trust it?
Well, it's a difficult thing, and I think that we have a lot of American hubris to think that we've never been involved in religious wars, or we haven't turned a blind eye to certain wars that involve religious ideology. I mean, certainly in Belfast, we had Protestants and Christians fighting each other. In Iraq, you've got multiple different religious groups, the Sunni and Shia, fighting each other. But the U.S. military is really in a better position in this day and age to understand culture. And I think we do a great job of training our leadership at every level about the understanding of culture and how that plays in there. To say that we had to fight the religion itself is not true. And to say that everybody who is a Muslim or reads the Quran is a bad person is not true. Because for the most part, Donna, we had so many kind, peace-loving people in Iraq trying to help us. I think to say that radical faction of Islam is emblematic of Iraqis or those that subscribe to that religion, it's just not true. Because at times they fed us bread, they took us into their homes and fed us warm chai, and they want security, they want stability. And, as we fought through those streets day in and day out, street to street, house to house, room to room, we were fighting amongst the people, this city of 300,000 people that was, infested with this brutal, faceless, ununiformed enemy that was hell-bent on killing Americans. And they would kill Iraqis in their way just to get their hateful ideology across. And these people were not collateral damage. They were people. They were men and women and brothers and sisters who wanted to go to college, who wanted to play soccer on the weekends, and they wanted a future. And they far outshadow those that wanted to do harm, that joined that small percentage of the insurgency that we were fighting and winning day in and day out. So it was a challenge culturally, and I think we did a great job then, and I think we continue to do a great job to educate our young warriors on how to understand that culture. And we've seen generational differences of that, and I think we continue to improve at that. The real failure in this long war, this war we've been fighting for 17 years, is that we've never defined what winning is. And people often ask me that question, did we win? Well, absolutely. If it meant killing bad guys, yeah, we were absolutely crushing them. We were killing more bad guys than they killed of us. And that's one metric to say you win a war. But our political and strategic level planners and leaders have never said what winning is in Iraq and Afghanistan. We've never defined what victory is. And I just posted something on social media to that degree to say, how can you say we've lost a war against a culture, against an enemy, when we haven't even, named the enemy? Terrorism is not an enemy. And we've never defined what winning is. We've never said what victory is by those who have declared and continue to wage this war. So it's a tough question to answer, and it's really become this academic discussion as well in many forms.
Yeah, and I want to also just kind of plug Denise Simon's show, because you and Denise talked about that at length one time during one of your interviews with her, and it was exceptional. So, ladies and gentlemen, go find the interview with Denise and Major Scott Huesing. There's a couple of them, but you went into depth on that. Scott, very quickly, I want to pass a compliment on to you that you may not be aware of. And this is not only a compliment to you, but all of your brothers that fought before you and after you in the Middle East. And this comes from a gentleman that is a bad hombre. But it comes through a good hombre. And the good hombre is Dr. James Mitchell. Dr. James Mitchell, you may or may not know, developed the enhanced interrogation program for high-value detainees. He's also the guy that interrogated for years and years and years KSM, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, ladies and gentlemen. And Khalid Sheikh Mohammed said, after a period of time that Dr. Mitchell spent with him, Dr. Mitchell asked him a very, very basic question. What the hell were you thinking, man, when you attacked American soil? What were you thinking? And KSM put his face in his hands, and just kind of shook his head and looked up at Dr. Mitchell and said, who would have thought Cowboy George Bush would have brought the wrath of the United States military down on us? He never thought that this would be handled as a military assault on him. And a hat tip to you, sir, and those that were before you in the Middle East and those that were after you, because there is no greater force on planet Earth that is a human force than that of the United States military.
Well, that's high praise coming from Dr. Mitchell for sure. And I would not disagree with the outcomes of how we gained information to, further our wins on the battlefield, both in Afghanistan and in Iraq. I think they're essential to putting those pieces together. And every time we talk about that, I think it's really interesting. Again, when we talk about how do we win this war, how do we gain something from this, we really struggle with that daily. I was very fortunate this week to be at a luncheon at the Nixon Library in Yorba Linda with some good friends up there and fellow author C.J. Chivers, who just wrote a great book too called The Fighters, which I'm reading right now. And, we were talking about these wars that have been going on for so long and all those great nuggets of intelligence and information we pull from the battlefield or from people. How does it really enhance our national security? What are those metrics of success? I think we really are in a state right now after 17 years of war. How do we answer those questions? And that's something we have not figured out. Those are answers we haven't gotten to yet.
Well,
that's frustrating.
This enemy...
That's really frustrating for guys that have been on the ground at the tactical level. And let's be clear. At the tactical level, Don, I wasn't fighting strategy. I wasn't fighting politics. I wasn't fighting theory. I was fighting the enemy. And that's your main concern at that level as you're continuing to try and survive every single day. And my only metric of success at that level was bringing as many Marines and soldiers home alive as possible. That's my success.
Well, I don't think there's ever been a more convoluted enemy ever in the history of warfare. But listen, we've only got a couple of minutes left. We need to talk about Save the Brave. Tell us about that, ladies and gentlemen. SaveTheBrave.org is the website. Major?
Well, I'm proud to have been asked to be the executive director of Save the Brave several years ago, and it was founded by one of my young Marines, Nick Velez, who was one of my young machine gunners in Ramadi, and he really figured out a way to bring veterans together, and it started small, and we've continued to grow over several years now at the right rate, and we've helped hundreds of veterans, and really, there is no better medicine. There is no better vaccine or pill than just getting veterans together to talk about some of the shared experience they have, to really unpack some of those small pieces of trauma that they've gathered. And SaveTheBrave.org really does that. And my friend Josh Collins, who's an Army Ranger, he says it best: connection is the cure. And bringing these veterans together is essential to not only staying connected, but also providing a safe environment. And I'm proud to donate a portion of the proceeds of the sale of Echo and Ramadi to Save the Brave, because, guys, at the beginning and the end of every day, for me, helping veterans is what makes me happy. And honestly, to be part of an organization like Save the Brave, to stay so connected, not just to the Marines I led, but all veterans who need assistance, that's really something powerful for me. That's something that I never expected when I wrote the book, to serve as a portal for other people to heal and stay connected. And for me, that leadership is important because there's no expiration date on my commission, Don. There's no way I could ever stop leading those Marines, because it didn't stop when I left Ramadi. It didn't stop when I left the Marine Corps. I continue to lead to this day, and it's something I think I'm very fortunate to have the capacity to do. I'm not saying that's for everybody. I'm not saying everybody has to write a book about it, but you can do something to keep our veteran community connected and make sure that they stay strong and they continue to heal. And that's the important message.
Absolutely. Major Scott Huesing, SaveTheBrave.org is the organization. The book, Echo in Ramadi, you can find it on Amazon, all the usual spots, actually, or go to echoinramadi.com. And Major Scott Huesing also, by the way, if they ever recast Walker, Texas Ranger, I say it would be you. But Don has a quote to close the show.
Yeah, normally, ladies and gentlemen, as you all know, Donna closes out the show with some poignant quote. I would like to do that today. And one of the things that I want you all to remember is that every day, we celebrate Veterans Day. And every day, we remember Memorial Day. Every day, ladies and gentlemen. It's not twice a year. It's every day. And with that in mind, Donna usually brings up these quotes, and I'm going to bring one up from this schmuck KSM, by gosh. And that is, who would have ever thought Cowboy George Bush would have brought down the wrath of the U.S. military? There is no bigger wrath, ladies and gentlemen. Have a great week. We appreciate the fact that you listen to us, and God bless America.
Out on the web at cowboylogic.us.